Game five. Bizarre choices between both players, to be honest. Again, bizarre choices, whether it's in the opening or the middle game. Let's dive in. You would know what I mean by making the moves and, sharing some ideas. So we had, Gukesh had white pieces. We had e4. Nothing so surprising here. So I was predicting maybe we could have, some kind of Italian. No, but no. We had e6, another French. I could easily make a prediction here. I could tell you that since we see now two French, it's easy to say and predict that this is something that we're going to see throughout the match. That, Ding is going to play e6. If he were to play like e5 down the road, then we'll be asking why didn't he play it like early on. So in my own perspective, I might be wrong, but in my own perspective, this is something he has prepared and he's gonna play it throughout the match, which is fine though. It's fine. However, it's white. You cash. How he deal with this? So d4, d5, and I think the first game knight c3, and I felt like it's a good choice, knight c3 here, but we have a shock here, and we have this. We have takes, exchange variation of the French. Don't get me wrong, this move is being played at the toppest levels, and nowadays people playing it GMs in the major tournaments. We're still looking at a match here, and Ding is preparing this for he's playing the French, so he's possibly preparing for the exchange variation, perhaps. I don't know if there's a lot of ideas for white, creative ideas that maybe he could try to find for ways to win. I just don't feel like this is a good idea for Ucash. And Black looking at this Ding, looking at this, he's probably happy. So we have take, and we have knight f3, and we have knight f6. Typically here, you're looking at bishop d3, bishop d6, very standard. So we had bishop d3. The next move by Ding, though, is pretty good, and I feel like it's pretty active. And he played c5. Pretty good stuff. c3, and we have the most active move here, c4 and bishop c2. You could argue and say that we could play b3 and go after just two pawns. It's not easy. I think there's lines where you play b3 and Black could argue and say I could take, and c3 becomes weak. Maybe c4 becomes weak. Could be used by Black. There's also lines where you could play b3, b5, and there are lines where a7 becomes a pass pawn early on. It's not easy to play this. Black has enough space on the queen side. And this may be something that Ding looked at and he felt like he's comfortable here. And I actually feel like Black is comfortable in this line. However, let me make a note here. After bishop d6, I believe I saw this game. It's a candidate game between Nakamura. I think Nakamura played this with the white pieces in one of the games in the candidates. However, though, I think it started up being Petrov, if I'm not mistaken. And you could actually go the Petrov, like e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6. You take the pawn, and then d6, you go back, d4, d5. Something similar to what we're having here. And I think that's what started out, being a Petrov in his game. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, though. It could be a different game that I'm looking at. But I think this is the one I saw. And I think bishop d6 was played, and I think Nakamura did castle, though. And I felt like castling is pretty good, and then he played h3, and he may have won the game. Nakamura won the game, perhaps. And Gukesh next move is, I don't know, I don't like it. He played this, queen e2, and, knowing Ding throughout the match, castling is not his thing, though. I mean, so when I saw queen e2, I was like, okay, that's, queen e7, queen takes e7, king takes, maybe castle, rook e8, king f8. No need to castle in this position. And you know what? It turns out to be that this is actually what happened. Exactly like this, takes, king takes, and then castles, and we have rook e8. To be honest here, should a lot of the pieces being traded here, you go to, like, let's say some kind of knight ending, pawn ending. The black king goes to f8, and he's closer than white king, so that's something to consider from black's perspective. There was a lot of king moves here, but it's good for black though. And we had here, I believe, rook here at e1, and then king f8, and then king takes again. Very hard to explain this to beginners. Especially people watching Ding from beginners, and they feel like this kind of stuff happening. They try to do this in their own games, and it becomes a problem. But this position is okay. You're supposed to play it like this. This is fine. So we had this kind of stuff, and bishop g5. This is good move. You might be looking at this kind of stuff, and maybe h7 might be hanging. And the next move is pretty logical. Is knight here. If I don't think taking here makes sense. You just take knight takes. You give up the bishop pair. Black would have the two bishops in a position like this. Should be active for him. Knight bd2. However, just to make a note that when Gukesh took on he played rook e1, and then he took on e8, and there's already queen exchange. Is he looking for win or draw, or what exactly is happening? I mean, it almost feels like he's playing for a draw, but in this position, there's still some ideas though. But you start to wonder once you play like this, is he looking for a draw though? It's just a idea that pops in when I saw the game live, and I was like, this is maybe what he's looking for, draw the game. But we have still some ideas. I mean, once we do more moves, you guys could see what I mean. There's still more ideas. H6. Dink spent some time here, and I don't blame him. This is actually, there's plenty of moves that black could do, and you have to find which way to go. And this is a stage of the game that I felt like taking time makes sense. So we had bishop h4, and then we had the knight h5. And knight h5 is pretty good though, and I felt like knight h5, it does want to go here. Activate the knight on a better square. There's potential jumping to d3, perhaps. There are plenty of ideas here. So we had rook e1, the king moves to king f8, nothing shocking here. And then here in this situation though, when you're playing, let's say we give like whites, I'm just making move, a4. You could say I have g5, and you could say I have the bishop pair in this situation. And this is actually what I mean by white has some ideas. This were to happen, if this were to happen, white has some plans on his own. You have knight f1, knight e3. F5 square is pretty weak. You could also play g4. This is actually a position that you could play for white. I mean, I would rather be white here. The bishop pair is not always a good thing. It depends on the game, depends on if there's any kind of weaknesses happening. It turns out to be that here you could play this kind of stuff, knight f1, knight e3, and white has some good ideas here. So if this were to happen, white would be more than happy to go for this line. However, we had some shocking move here, I think. Actually, it's white to move. So instead of g5, it's white to move, or e4. You could just play a knight f1. And the idea is knight e3. The idea here, though, the one piece that I don't like for white is actually the knight sitting on d2. It's not doing much. So the only way to activate it to better square is knight f1, knight e3. Right now, that was a better idea. The next move doesn't make sense, to be honest. It's shocking. It doesn't make sense to me. Why he played it. G4, and it turns out to be that somebody told me also like G4, or G4 has been played a lot throughout the match. Gukesh playing a lot of G4. I mean, I don't know why G4 here. This is basically inviting black easily to jump to F4. There's also some weaknesses on here, the squares. It's not as big of a deal because there's no queens on the board. But I just don't like this move g4. Also, the pawn could be attacked in some lines. He's just allowing black to just go to knight f4 fast enough. I don't like it, though. I don't feel like this is the best move. I think by far knight f1, knight e3 is the best moves strategically. So knight f4, and then we have we have possibly bishop g3, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, bishop g3. So he's putting... he's trying to, Gukesh is trying to say that the knight can't jump really because I could take your bishop. However, the next move is pretty good, and I think the next move it does allow three things. It does have like three things going for it, and we have knight b6. Not two things, perhaps three. And when you make a move in chess that does have a purpose, like it does have a meaning that it does two things, it's always good. The reason I feel like knight b6 is pretty good, though, first of all, it's opening up for the bishop. Right now, you're attacking on g4. The other move, though, it's actually there's a potential jump on e4. Not right now because the bishop could take the knight, but should this were to happen and some kind of here later, not now because the bishop is hanging, and then knight a4, you start to question: could you easily defend b2, c3? So this move on b6 has a good meaning toward some ideas that potential jumping on e4. The other thing that it might be doing, should white somehow later play knight f1, knight e3, the knight on b6 defends on d5, so some kind of extra protection on d5. So I think Gukesh played g5, but again, why should he play g4 and you just have to lose a turn by playing g5? I just don't feel like g4 was a good idea. By the way, this black may try to win a pawn here. You could argue and say, well, can he just try to win, trade everything, and then take on knight g5? I mean, the idea is take and some kind of knight g5 takes. You have a free pawn. Not so easy. Should you take here? The white has a trick, and pawn takes. The pawn is gonna promote though. h7, h8. Should you move back? h7, h8. So you could probably take and then something like here, and white is so good here in this position, more comfortable with the pieces. This is something that black would not be going for. So we have here, and I think Ding took on here pretty fast though. Take here, and there's a little tactic happening here. Let's say if black were to play e6, that's a big mistake because you're likely to get mated. You're gonna get mated here. Not likely. The bishop defending on h7, so here, but you cannot take because of the bishop, so rook e8, and you have to block with bishop f8, and then rook takes. That's checkmate. Obviously, Ding saw that. And his next move is pretty predictable, though. Bishop d7. It's a developing move, good enough, and also stopping the checkmate. But, he was preparing this anyway. So here, I looked at this and I feel like knight f1 is probably good enough. Again, the knight is not doing anything on d2. Should you go to e3? It's just going to be like you activating the knight in a better square. Gukesh played this. I think he went backwards, and he just make two wasting moves, takes, come back. Apparently here he's fine though because he's looking at this kind of jump on e5. But again, I think he had the choice to just go to knight f1. The next move by Ding though, I don't like it though, and we had rook e8. I think the better move is rook d8. There's a reason behind this move, perhaps to move the bishop, so the d6 is being protected by the rook, and you don't trade rooks. Should you try to go for a win, you may not trade rooks. I think trading rooks is probably heading toward a draw, a lot easier. Should white trading more, it would be a lot easier for white to draw. Rook d8, and there's actually no issues for black here. Black could play on. He doesn't, there's no obligation for him to trade rooks. I don't know why should you trade rooks here. There's actually an observation that I had in this game specifically. I mean, it started happening in the previous game, but it wasn't that crucial for that game. I noticed that both players are playing fast in this game, more than usual. In a critical stage in the game, you would be playing fast. There was a big mistakes that happened just by them playing fast. When we say time management is an issue, it is an issue in the past games. We just were saying that you play faster in the opening, but you have to take your time to find any kind of advantage without getting in trouble and like time control trouble. I mean, and obviously try to get to move 40 without any kind of issues. This game is still an ending game, so you could take your time to find the best moves. And it felt like, you know, Ding was playing fast, and also Gukesh is playing fast, and they made some mistakes by doing that. However, I mean, Rook E8 is a decent move, of course, but you know, it's a way of saying I want to take a draw, perhaps. And it's easy now for White to make moves. It's knight e5, and I suppose you take here now. Rook takes, and you know, rook takes and taking here is pretty much, in my own view, it's a draw. Even after you play knight d3, I think you could take, and then it's probably a draw here. Not much going on. Since the rooks are traded, then you know the king would probably come on e3 at some point. Should be easy draw here. No issues. You could also play knight e2 and take on g3. So this actually was a plan. This kind of stuff. So Gukesh played this fast enough, and that's actually what I meant. He didn't take with the rook. He ended up taking with the pawn. And that's a mistake, though. There's no question about this one. I actually felt like he missed a big line here. There's a reason why I think he played this one, and he missed a line. I think Gukesh was looking at the following. He was basically saying, this is a good move. I'm attacking the knight. I would like to see the knight being on d3 even. So the idea is here, and should you take, and b3. If you look at this strategically, this must favor white. F4 or something, where f3 king comes in, and you could claiming that you may have active pieces. However, since the rook's on the board, there's rook c8, and then you could argue and say this is no big deal, and you know Gukesh looked at rook c1, and then you have this move d4, and then simply you cannot take because of the rook takes on c1, unprotected rook at c1. So you could say c4, and he missed this move. And I think should you go here, attack the knight, then knight c3, and this is actually should be winning. Very strong stuff here. Should be good for black at very minimum if it's not winning. So he missed this line. And this happens because the rook's still on the same... It's still on the board, right? And he missed this potential pin that he can't take on here. So I mean, obviously, this is missed. And going back, pawn takes. And then he figured out that he cannot, after he takes here, he cannot play b3. F3 was his choice. So he knew that b3 wouldn't work very well for him. I think he was trying to go over here, king f2, that's his idea. Now, when you have this position for black, I think Ding has like 47 minutes. So, time management is key. So I think here he could spend a lot of time to look at the possibilities, how he could gain an advantage. There was 3 moves. 2 good moves, 1 not so much, you know. In my own opinion, rook e6 was also like really good. The idea is potentially to try to get to knight a4, forcing white to play rook b1 because he cannot play b3 because of knight takes c3 though. Something like, you know, knight a4, rook b1, and then rook b6. There's ways white could defend, but he becomes really passive. And you know, becomes really a problem for black to hold. And this is the reason why you keep hanging on with the rooks. The rook on e6 becomes inactive, and the rook at e1 becomes inactive. I'm shocked by Ding didn't see this idea. He had plenty of time. There's no excuse here. There's no excuse not to find rook e6. It's an idea just to go to b6. The other idea is more obvious, and it's knight a4. Perhaps knight e4. It's also could potentially... after we talk about f3, so knight e4, it's difficult. Should you play b3? You take on c3. Here's this there's a weird line. I mean, not a weird line. There's a line here you could do. Let's say rook b1. There's like f6. You sack a pawn, something like this, and then you could do rook here. And let's say you take here and some kind of bishop here. There's bishop h3. This is overwhelming stuff. Should be active. Possibly winning here, of course, I guess. Should be winning. This is one way that Black could do this. So he had two strong moves and he had plenty of time. Usually when you have a good position like this and you have a lot of choices, you sit there, even if you spend 20 minutes. I mean, even if you spend 30 minutes in this position, you probably figure out what to do, and then he could start blitzing the moves, because this is easy for Black, and it's easy to see the moves. You could start blitzing the moves because there's not much pieces on the board here. To my shock, though, he played the third move that it doesn't make sense to me. It does make sense, but it's not winning. It doesn't give you winning chances, though. He played here, and he played it fast. This actually, I feel like here is a draw, and simply the reason is, you just take and you have opposite call bishops, and I think Gukesh was preparing to give up f3 to try to draw the game, and it's opposite call bishops, even though you have d3 pawn, pass pawn, it's possibly heading toward a draw here. What happened now is simply rook e4. You have to be careful here with Black. I felt like bishop f5 is one way to go. Let me explain. Should you take here? It's a big mistake because you could play rook d8. Should you play here? You just take here. The pawn is just good for promotion. You cannot take on c4. And then let's say here that you have to pretty much lose a piece, something like this, and then you lose a piece, and that's winning. So bishop f5 is going to be met by rook d4, the original idea, and then b5, and possibly get the king involved in the game, and try to play this 40 move and beyond. Make Gukesh defend this position. It may end up in a draw, but this is still a lot of moves to make. There's potential f6 ideas and some ideas you could create to open up lines, and it may be Black is between two results. Actually, it's not maybe, it's between two results, whether he wins or draws. So I felt this is one way to do it. There's another way. He played bishop c6. I don't know if it's the same bishop f5. You could argue and say bishop f5 is pretty more effective. This is also good, but I mean, what happens next is shocking, though. I mean, I cannot believe it myself when it happened. So I think what happened in this move is actually, and you cannot take here. Bishop c6 is equivalent to bishop f5 with same plans. This is rook here. It's the same idea that he takes, and then d2. And you cannot do. He's just simply winning. This is, you just have to lose a piece. So it's the same plan as bishop f5. So here, Ding is playing fast, and I'm not sure why he's playing fast. I mean, I just don't understand. This is so obvious that I'm assuming he's playing fast. He figured out what to do, but he played it fast and he ended up blundering. To me, it was a clear blunder, though. So he took here, and then we had king f2, pretty obvious move. That's the idea behind f3, right? Could you guys pause the video and find the move here for Black? I mean, I'm assuming most of you would find it. So now your bishop is attacked. What do? You go back? Where exactly should you put your bishop? There's only one good way to do it. I mean, there's a potential of, like, you don't want to go to h1, right? So if you pause the video, you found the move, pretty good. If you don't find it, that's fine. There's always room for improvements, watching content, and improve your game. The only move that makes sense is bishop h5. It's no-brainer here, and it doesn't have to be, anybody could see this move, and the idea is pretty simple. It's a very simple idea. Well, white cannot take here. because this d2 and this d1, right? d1 is coming. I think you have to play like, king over or something, and then this b5. But again, you could play this and try to improve your position. Play this for 40 moves and beyond, make him play. To my surprise, though, I've seen something that's so strange you don't see every day. He just went back. He just went back, and I was like, what? What is going on here? Why did you go back? This is terrible blunder, though. To me, in my own view, why should you be playing like this? I mean, you have a pass pawn. You should try to force Gukesh to play more defending. The reason this is a terrible move, it's actually a blunder, though. It's because of rook takes. Rook takes c4. And you don't have this anymore because you could just simply take stakes, and you don't have this. I think he just play here. And then the pawn is, white could stop the pawn with the king. And it's just strange. When I saw that, I was like, why this is happening? You should spend some more time and just try to find the best moves. I mean, here, and then we have here, and then bishop d5. And for some bizarre reasons, king e7. And then for some bizarre reasons, actually, the pawn is... is going to be taken on d3. It's just strange. This is the one that he should be winning. This might be the winning pawn for black, and now he's just giving it. It doesn't matter here, though, because simply after you take, it's a draw. It's funny that Gukesh is up a pawn here, but even if he's up a pawn here, he cannot win. The pawn's going to be in the light squares. He could never win, and then king sitting on e6 and the bishop covering, so there's no way you could play d5 or anything. So 0 repeat move, king c3, king d over, king f5, king e3, king e6. It's a draw here, of course. Weird blunder, weird choices. Very bizarre stuff happening in this World Championship. Bizarre choices. Very strange. It ended up in a draw, but again, both players played fast more than usual. I think they have a problem with time management, so they try to play faster, but they end up playing faster in the wrong turns. Hopefully, they are able to really play, able to fix this by the next games. Usually, game 6 is a really critical game in the match. Going by the past cycles. Ding is having white. With how the match is going, I wouldn't be surprised if we see 1b3, Nimzo Larsen. Wouldn't be surprising. He already played knight f3 and end up playing b3, so he could actually play b3 and knight f3, this kind of move order. It wouldn't surprise me. He could play knight f3 again. He's having the white pieces, so he could play knight f3 again, b3. Or he could play e4. So we are between those three moves. I don't think he's going to play the English. He's not going to play d4. We are between those three moves, perhaps. Maybe e4 is a little bit closer. Knight f3. And wouldn't be a shocker if 1b3, though. However, we're looking for a good game. Competitive game between both players in game 6. Hopefully we could see something challenging and some kind of result. Positive result, perhaps. Win or lose, it's okay. Or if it's a draw, to be long draw, like a game being perfectly played by both players, so that would be okay. Hopefully you guys enjoy this recap, and stay tuned for more game reviews. Take care.